I thought I had the perfect life. A beautiful wife I adored, a successful career, a home in a quiet Austin suburb. But behind the perfect facade, my wife and her family were building an empire of lies, and they were using my name and my reputation as the foundation. They thought I was a fool, a pawn in their game of greed and deceit. They gaslit me, manipulated me, and prepared to leave me to take the fall for a massive financial crime that would have ruined me forever. What they didn't know is that a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous man of all. How does one man dismantle a criminal enterprise from the inside when the mastermind is sleeping in his bed? This is the story of how I stopped playing the victim and started the investigation that would lead to the most public, devastating, and satisfying revenge imaginable. You will not believe how this ends. Listen to the entire story to discover the one secret that brought their whole corrupt world crashing down. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. It all started with a single email, an invoice for a company I'd never heard of, for a service I never ordered. And it was addressed to me. I was sitting in my home office in our sprawling house in Lakeway, just outside of Austin, Texas. The late afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. I'm an architect, and my life is built on details, on the precise intersection of lines, and the calculated load-bearing capacity of a structure. A stray variable, an unaccounted for number, it sets my teeth on edge. This email was a stray variable. Valerius Holdings, LLC, Geotechnical Surveying Services, invoice hash 734, $12,500. I stared at the screen, a knot of confusion tightening in my gut. Valerius Holdings. The name sounded like something out of a Roman history textbook, not a Texan subcontractor. I'd certainly never hired them. My current project was a boutique hotel downtown, and my geotech guys were a firm called Bedrock Solutions. I'd worked with them for a decade. I leaned back in my chair, the expensive leather groaning in protest. It was a gift from my wife Isabella, for my 35th birthday. For the most brilliant architect in Austin, the card had said. Bella had a way of making you feel like the center of the universe. It was her superpower. When I met her 5 years ago at a fundraiser, it felt like my life went from black and white to technicolor. She was vibrant, impossibly beautiful, with a laugh that could disarm a battalion. She ran a boutique PR firm, and she moved through the upper echelons of Austin society with an effortless grace that I, a man more comfortable with blueprints than small talk, could only admire. Marrying her felt like winning a lottery I didn't even know I'd entered. But along with Bella, I inherited her family. Her father, Marcus, was a real estate developer with the slick, predatory charm of a televangelist. He always had a grand new venture on the horizon, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that seemed to require a constant influx of other people's money. Her mother, Chloe, was his immaculately preserved echo, a woman whose entire existence seemed dedicated to maintaining the glossy veneer of wealth and social standing. They were exhausting, but they were Bella's parents, so I smiled, I nodded, and I endured the endless condescending conversations about my quaint salaried life. "Hey, babe," I called out. Bella appeared in the doorway, a vision in a white silk robe. She was scrolling on her phone, one perfect eyebrow arched. What's up, Ethan? You ever hear of a company called Valerius Holdings?" She glanced at the screen, a flicker of something, annoyance, recognition, crossing her face before it was smoothed away. Doesn't ring a bell. Why? I just got an invoice from them. For 12.5 grand. She waved a dismissive hand, the diamonds on her wedding ring catching the light. Oh, it's probably one of Dad's things. You know how he is, always setting up new LCS for his projects. He probably put your name on something by mistake. I'll ask him about it, don't worry. Don't worry, it was her favorite refrain. It was the anesthetic she applied to any of my concerns, anytime my internal alarm bells started to chime, and like a fool, I usually let her. The dissonance was too great, the woman I adored, the love of my life, versus the nagging feeling that things didn't add up. It was easier to believe her, to silence the part of my brain that demanded logic and order. It was easier to believe that my father, a man who had served as a district judge for 30 years and prized integrity above all else, had just raised a son who was a little too cautious. "You shouldn't be putting my name on things without asking me, Bella," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Oh, Ethan, don't be so dramatic," she said, her voice laced with that playful condescension she'd learned from her father. "It's just business. Your family, he probably sees you as a partner in all this. You should be flattered." She blew me a kiss from the doorway. "I'm going to take a bath. We have the charity dinner for the Children's Alliance tonight, remember?" Black tie. And just like that, the conversation was over. The stray variable was filed away under "don't worry," but it didn't go away. It sat in my inbox, a digital splinter under my skin. I did a quick search for Valerius Holdings, LLC, Texas. The registration documents popped up. It was formed 6 months ago. The registered agent was a generic corporate services company in Delaware, but the managing members listed were Marcus Thorne and Ethan James. Me. My blood ran cold. I had never signed any document to form this company. I had never even heard the name. This wasn't a mistake. This was something else. The charity dinner that night was at the Four Seasons. It was the typical Austin gala. A sea of glittering gowns, clinking champagne glasses, and the low hum of self-congratulation. Bella was in her element, flitting from group to group, her laughter echoing. I felt like a ghost at the feast. Valerius Holdings was all I could think about. Marcus cornered me by the bar, clapping me on the shoulder a little too hard. He was a big man, florid and sweating slightly in his tuxedo. "Ethan, my boy, heard you were asking about Valerius. Smart. Always good to keep an eye on your assets." He winked, a conspiratorial gesture that made my skin crawl. "And I wasn't aware it was one of my assets, Marcus," I said, my voice tight. "Or that I was a managing member." He laughed, a booming sound that drew a few glances. "Semantics, my boy, semantics. We're family. I'm working on a new development out by Lake Travis. A real game changer. Luxury eco-condos. Valerius is the holding company for the land purchase. Having an architect of your caliber on the letterhead, well, it adds a certain gravitas, lends credibility with the investors. You used my name without my permission," I said, keeping my voice low. His smile tightened. The jovial mask slipped, and for a second I saw the predator underneath. "Don't get your shirt in a knot, Ethan. You're benefiting from this. Our fortunes are tied together now. When this project hits, we're all going to be drinking champagne on a much bigger boat. You're playing in the big leagues now. Try to enjoy it." He patted my shoulder again, a gesture that felt more like a warning than an affirmation, and walked away. I stood there, my drink untouched, a cold fury mixing with a profound sense of unease. Our fortunes are tied together now. It didn't sound like a promise. It sounded like a threat. The next few months were a masterclass in gaslighting. Every time I brought up a financial inconsistency, a credit card bill with charges for 5-star hotels in cities Bella had never mentioned visiting, a wire transfer from our joint account to an unknown entity, it was met with the same wall of dismissal and subtle accusation. "You're checking the credit card bills now, Ethan? Don't you trust me? That transfer was for one of Dad's investors. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand the structure. Honestly, your obsession with every single dollar is so middle class. We're building an empire here. You need to think bigger." She made me feel small, anxious, paranoid. She would shower me with affection one moment, telling me how much she loved me, how I was her rock, and then cut me down with a casual, cruel remark the next. It was a dizzying, disorienting dance, and I didn't know the steps. I was in a constant state of cognitive dissonance, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the stranger who was spending money we didn't seem to have and hiding things from me. I started to question my own judgment. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this was how the wealthy operated. Maybe my father's rigid, black and white world of law and ethics had left me unequipped for the gray areas of high finance. The breaking point, the moment the floor fell out from under me, came on a rainy Tuesday in November. I was working from home, trying to finalize the schematics for a public library project. A project I was proud of, a piece of civic architecture that felt honest and real. Bella was out, at a client lunch that had started at noon and was still going at 4 p.m. A notification popped up on my screen. "Your shared cloud drive is 95% full." Annoyed, I opened the drive to clear out some old files. We used it for everything: vacation photos, household documents, my architectural portfolios. I clicked through the folders, deleting old drafts, and then I saw it. A folder I didn't recognize. It was titled, Project Nightingale. My curiosity piqued. I clicked it open. Inside was a labyrinth of subfolders: financial projections, investor pitch decks, bank statements, and architectural plans. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I opened one of the architectural files. It was a sprawling, gaudy monstrosity of a mansion, the kind of place that screams new money and bad taste. And in the bottom right-hand corner, in the title block, was my firm's logo and my signature. It was a perfect forgery. Undeniably my signature, but I had never drawn a single line of this building. I started clicking faster, my hands trembling. I found scanned documents, loan applications, city permits, partnership agreements, all bearing my forged signature. They had tied me to at least 3 different developments I knew nothing about. Valerius Holdings was just the tip of the iceberg. There was Nightingale Estates, Onyx Developments, Apex Land Group, an entire shadow empire built on my name, my professional license, my reputation. And then I found the last folder. It was simply labeled. I clicked it. It contained a single audio file. I put on my headphones, my breath catching in my throat, and pressed play. It was Bella's voice, clear as day, but she wasn't alone. Marcus was with her. They were laughing. He actually believed the geotechnical survey story, Bella said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. He's so adorably linear. He sees an invoice and his little architect brain just has to balance the books. Marcus chuckled, a low, guttural sound. He's the perfect cover, I'll give you that. Son of the sainted Judge James. Not a speck of dirt on him. No one would ever suspect he's the front man for an operation like this. By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone, and he'll be the one explaining it all to the feds. My world stopped. The air left my lungs. This wasn't just about money, they were framing me. Does he suspect anything? Marcus asked. He's getting antsy about the spending, Bella said, her tone shifting to one of boredom. Xian keeps asking questions. It's exhausting. I have to constantly manage his anxiety. Sometimes I think his father's pathetic, working-class morality is a genetic defect. Pathetic, working-class morality. The words were like a physical blow. My father had died 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He had been the moral compass of my life. To hear her speak of him like that with such casual, venomous disdain. Just keep him happy, baby girl, Marcus said. Keep him in the dark for 6 more months. That's all we need. The final loan for the Nightingale project comes through after the Winter Gala. It's the big one. Once that money is in our offshore account, you can leave the Boy Scout to his blueprints and his broken heart. You'll have earned your freedom. And my $10 million bonus, Bella added, her voice dripping with avarice. And your $10 million bonus, Marcus confirmed. The recording ended. I sat there in the silence of my office, the rain streaking down the window pane. The room felt like a tomb. The beautiful house, the expensive chair, the whole life I thought I had built, it was all a lie. A meticulously constructed stage set for a play in which I was the designated fool, the fall guy. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had hollowed me out. They had taken my love, my trust, my name, my father's memory, and twisted it all into a weapon to be used against me. The grief was a tidal wave, black and suffocating. It rose up and crashed over me, and for a long time I just let it. I sat there and let the pain scour me clean. But as the hours passed and the rain turned to a steady, grim drizzle, something else began to surface through the wreckage. It was cold and hard and sharp. It was rage. A rage so pure and focused it burned away the tears. They thought I was a fool. They thought I was a Boy Scout. They thought I would just sit here and let them destroy me. They were about to find out how wrong they were. They had built an empire of lies on my name, and I was going to be the one to burn it to the ground. The architect was about to become the demolition expert. My new project, my life's work, was to design their ruin, and I would build it with the same meticulous, obsessive attention to detail they had so carelessly underestimated. The game was on. My first move was to become the man they thought I was. The loving, trusting, slightly clueless husband. It was the hardest role I'd ever had to play. That evening when Bella came home, smelling of expensive wine and someone else's perfume, I greeted her with a kiss. "How was your lunch?" I asked, my voice impossibly steady. "Ain't long," she sighed, dropping her purse on the marble entryway table. "You wouldn't believe the drama with the new client. But we sealed the deal. She smiled, a dazzling empty thing. How was your day, my love? Quiet, I said. Productive. I finished the library schematics. That's my brilliant husband, she said, tapping my chest. Still building things for the little people. It's sweet. The venom in that single word, sweet, was enough to power a small city, but I just smiled. Someone has to. Inside, the cold rage was a block of ice in my chest, but on the outside, I was calm. I was the eye of the hurricane. The first step in any demolition is a thorough site analysis. I needed to understand the full structure of their fraud before I could identify its weak points. That night, after she fell asleep, a deep, untroubled sleep I knew I would never experience again, I went back to my office and closed the door. I took a new encrypted hard drive I'd bought that afternoon and began the painstaking process of copying the entire contents of the Project Nightingale folder. Every forged document, every incriminating email, every fabricated invoice. It took hours. As the progress bar crept across the screen, I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were an archaeologist cataloging the artifacts of a dead civilization. My civilization. The next day I opened a new bank account at a credit union they'd never heard of. I started diverting a portion of my legitimate paycheck into it. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was my war chest. I bought a burner phone and a small, high-quality voice recorder. I was building my toolkit. My life split into two. By day I was Ethan James, doting husband and diligent architect. I went to work. I reviewed structural plans. I sat through meetings. I went to dinners with Bella and her parents, nodding along as Marcus pontificated about his latest vision, smiling as Chloe critiqued the wine, and holding Bella's hand as she lied to my face. But by night, I was a different person. I was a forensic investigator. I turned my architect's eye for detail from buildings to balance sheets. I taught myself about shell corporations, money laundering techniques, and forensic accounting. I read articles, watched tutorials, and fell down rabbit holes of white-collar crime. The internet is a powerful teacher when you have the right motivation. I started mapping out their network. It was a complex web of LCs, all feeding into a central non-profit organization called the Austin Future Fund. This was their masterstroke, their crown jewel of deceit. On the surface, the AF was a legitimate charity dedicated to urban renewal and community support. They had a slick website, a board of directors filled with a few unsuspecting but well-respected local figures, and a portfolio of supposed charitable projects. Bella's PR firm handled their public image, plastering the city with stories of their good deeds. But the EF was a washing machine. Marcus would secure funding from shady investors, men whose money was likely not clean, for his phantom real estate projects under companies like Valerius Holdings. A portion of that money would be funneled as a donation to the Austin Future Fund, cleansing it. The AF would then grant funds or award contracts for its charitable works to other shell companies controlled by Marcus, often using my forged architectural plans to justify exorbitant costs for projects that never broke ground. From there, the money would disappear into offshore accounts. It was a closed loop of fraud, elegant in its depravity, and I was the keystone that gave the whole rotten arch its stability. The gaslighting intensified as I began to subtly probe for information. I had to be careful. I couldn't ask direct questions that would reveal my suspicion, so I played the part of the interested, slightly dumb husband who was finally trying to think bigger. One evening over dinner, I said to Marcus, "You know, I've been thinking about what you said, about the big leagues. I'd love to understand the structure of the Future Fund better. It's an incredible thing you're doing for the city." Marcus preened, swelling with self-importance. "It's about legacy, Ethan, building something that lasts." I was looking at the website, I continued, feigning innocence. The East Side Community Arts Hub project looks amazing. The designs are fantastic. I knew for a fact that the designs were a slightly modified version of a student project I'd judged at UDA. "Who's the contractor on that one?" Bella shot me a sharp look across the table. "Ethan, let's not talk shop. It's so boring." No, the boy's taking an interest," Marcus boomed. "That's a firm called Citadel Construction, top-notch guys." I made a mental note. Later, that night. It was another LLC, registered just 4 months prior. Its address was a P.O. box in a town 100 miles away. Its managing member, Chloe Thorne, Bella's mother. It was a family affair, a closed circle of thieves. One of the hardest parts was the physical intimacy. To have Bella touch me, to have her kiss me and whisper, "I love you," in the dark, knowing what she was doing. It was a violation that went deeper than any financial crime. Every touch felt like a lie. Every shared moment was tainted. I would lie next to her, my body rigid, my mind racing, forcing myself to breathe evenly, to play the part of the sleeping husband while my soul was screaming. I was living inside my own personal psychological thriller, and the monster was sleeping on the pillow next to me. My big break came from an unexpected source, a man named David Chen. He was a small business owner, an immigrant who ran a specialty lighting supply store. His company was listed on the Austin Future Fund's website as a proud partner on the fictitious Eastside Arts Hub. I found his name on a fabricated invoice in the cloud drive. An invoice for $80,000 worth of custom fixtures that I knew had never been ordered, let alone delivered. I went to his store on a Saturday morning. It was a small, dusty place, filled with the scent of ozone and cardboard. David was an older man, with kind, weary eyes. I introduced myself as an architect working on a project in the area. I didn't mention the F. I just asked him about his business. He was proud of his work, but his shoulders were slumped with worry. Business was slow. The big online retailers were killing him. "I had a big hope a few months ago," he said, his English accented but precise. "A big contract, from a charity, the Austin Future Fund, for a new arts center." My heart hammered. "What happened?" He sighed, polishing a glass fixture with a soft cloth. "They came in, a man and a woman, very slick, very charming. They said they wanted to use local suppliers. They talked about community. They made me feel important." He looked at me, a deep sadness in his eyes. "They said they needed me to pay a supplier registration and insurance fee to get the contract. $10,000. They said it was standard procedure for a project of that size. A refundable deposit." I felt sick. "And you paid it?" He nodded grimly. "It was all my savings, but the contract was for $80,000. I thought it was my big chance, to expand, to hire my nephew." He gestured to the empty storefront. "After I paid, I never heard from them again. The phone number is disconnected. The emails bounced back. The money is just gone." He wasn't just a name on a fake invoice. He was a real person, a man with a family and a dream, and they had crushed it for a paltry $10,000. They hadn't just stolen his money, they had stolen his hope. And he wouldn't be the only one. How many other David Chens were there? How many small lives had they casually ruined to fund their lavish one? I left his store with a new resolve. This wasn't just about my own revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was for my father. It was for David Chen. It was for every person this family had stepped on to get to the top. I had the what and the how. Now I needed the when and the where. I found it in an email from Bella to her mother, a message I was sure she thought was innocuous. "Mom, have you confirmed the caterer for the gala? I want everything to be perfect." This is the culmination of everything Dad has been working towards. The final piece of the puzzle. The winter gala, the event Marcus mentioned in the recording. The night they were due to receive the final massive loan that would be the capstone of their fraud before they vanished. The email included an attachment, a PDF of the invitation. The Austin Future Fund Winter Gala, building tomorrow, today. It was being held in the grand ballroom of the brand new Omni Hotel downtown, in 6 weeks. That was my deadline. That was my D-Day. The gala wasn't going to be their coronation. It was going to be their execution, and I would be the one dropping the guillotine. The next 6 weeks were the most intense of my life. I operated on 4 hours of sleep a night, fueled by caffeine and a cold, burning rage. My parallel life became my only life. The daytime charade was just a means to an end. I consolidated my evidence. The audio recording of Bella and Marcus was the crown jewel, but I needed more. I needed something visual, something undeniable, something that could be understood in seconds by a room full of people. My architectural skills, the very skills they had co-opted for their crimes, would become my weapon. I started creating a presentation. It wasn't a PowerPoint with boring bullet points. It was an animated narrative. Using 3D modeling software, I created a simple, clear visual flowchart of their entire scheme. I showed the money coming in from the shadowy investors. I showed it flowing into the shell corporations. I showed it being laundered through the Austin Future Fund, illustrated with the AFZone's smiling, charitable logo. Then, I showed it flowing out to Citadel Construction and the other fake companies, and finally into a box labeled offshore accounts, with renderings of Marcus and Bella on a yacht, laughing. I embedded copies of the forged documents, my signature glowing red. I inserted clips from the audio recording, the waveform pulsing on screen as their voices damned them. I included a picture of David Chen and a quote from my conversation with him. I compiled a list of every fake invoice, every fraudulent permit, every dollar they had stolen. It was my masterpiece, a symphony of their destruction. I saved the final video file onto a thumb drive, which I kept on a chain around my neck, under my shirt, at all times. At home, I played my part to perfection. I feigned excitement about the gala. I helped Bella choose a dress, a stunning blood-red couture gown. "And Honor be the most beautiful woman in the room," I told her, my voice soft, as she twirled in front of the mirror. "We have to look the part," she said, her eyes gleaming. "This night is the start of everything, Ethan." "For us." "I know," I said, and I meant it. The week of the gala I made my final move. I contacted a journalist. Not some small-time blogger, but a respected investigative reporter at the Austin American-Statesman. A woman named Sarah Jenkins, who had a reputation for breaking big stories on political corruption. I sent her an anonymous encrypted email from a public library computer. Subject: the biggest charity fraud in Austin history. "Jenkins, I have a story for you that will blow the lid off the Austin social scene. It involves a prominent family, a beloved charity, and millions of dollars in fraudulent loans and laundered money. The entire scheme is set to culminate this Saturday at the Austin Future Fund Winter Gala. And I'll be there. I will provide you with everything you need. This is not a prank. This is your next Pulitzer." I didn't include the evidence, not yet. I needed her there. I needed her there. I needed a credible public witness. The day of the gala, a strange calm settled over me. It was the quiet focus that comes before a major presentation, the moment an architect stands before the city council to defend his design. I knew my plans. I had checked every calculation. I put on my tuxedo. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw the dark circles under my eyes, the new, hard lines around my mouth. The naive, trusting man I had been a few months ago was gone forever. I didn't mourn him. He had been a liability. Bella came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. She rested her chin on my shoulder, looking at our reflection. "And we look like a power couple, don't we?" she murmured, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "And we do," I said, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Tonight's a big night." She smiled, a cat who got the cream smile. "Oh, Bella," I thought, "neither do you." We arrived at the Omni. The ballroom was breathtaking, a cavern of crystal chandeliers and floral arrangements. Hundreds of Austin's wealthiest and most powerful were there, schmoozing and sipping champagne. Marcus and Chloe were holding court near the entrance, greeting guests like royalty. I spotted Sarah Jenkins near the back, looking sharp and skeptical in a simple black dress, a notepad in her hand. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. I gave an almost imperceptible nod. The first part of the evening was a blur of air kisses and meaningless chatter. I was on autopilot, smiling, shaking hands, my mind focused on one thing, the tech booth at the back of the room. During a walkthrough a week prior, I had identified the AV system. It was a standard setup, controlled by a central laptop. All I needed was 30 seconds. My chance came as the waiters were serving the main course. Bella was deep in conversation with a state senator. Marcus was preparing for his big speech. I excused myself, saying I needed to use the restroom. I walked calmly, deliberately, to the back of the ballroom. The tech booth was manned by a single, bored-looking kid in a company polo shirt scrolling on his phone. "Hey," I said, flashing a confident smile. "Ethan James, Marcus Thorne's son-in-law. We've got a last-minute change to the presentation video. Marcus wants a new file added to the top of the playlist." The kid barely looked up. "Unsure, whatever. You got it on a thumb drive." My heart was a trip hammer. My hand was perfectly steady as I plugged it into his laptop. I found my file, F-Gala Final, MP4, and dragged it to the desktop. "Just make sure this is the one that plays when Marcus gives the cue for the video," I said. "It's the most important part of the night." "Yeah, got it," he mumbled, already back to his phone. I walked away, my blood singing with adrenaline. The trap was set, all the pieces were in place. I returned to our table. Bella gave me a questioning look. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," I said, taking a sip of water. "Just getting ready for the show." After dessert, the lights dimmed. Marcus took the stage to a round of thunderous applause. He stood at the podium, basking in the adoration, the very picture of a civic leader and philanthropist. "Friends, colleagues, fellow Austinites," he began, his voice booming through the sound system. "Tonight we are not just celebrating a charity, we are celebrating a dream of a better Austin, a future built by us, for us." He went on for 10 minutes, spewing platitudes about community, legacy, and vision. I watched Bella at my table. She was looking at her father with tears in her eyes, her face filled with pride. The utter lack of self-awareness was staggering. They really believed their own lies. Finally, Marcus reached his crescendo. "Our work has been made possible by the generous support of partners who believe in this dream. And tonight, I am thrilled to announce our largest partnership yet. A $20 million loan from the good people at Texas Commerce Bank, which will allow us to break ground on the Nightingale Community and Wellness Center next month." More applause. The president of the bank, a portly man named Henderson, joined Marcus on stage, holding a giant ceremonial check. "And now," Marcus beamed, turning to the massive screens behind him, "I want to show you a short video that truly captures the spirit of what we are building together. Hit it." That was the cue. I held my breath. The screens flickered. But it wasn't the slick, professionally produced promo video that appeared. It was my presentation. It started with the simple flow chart. The clear, damning lines showing the flow of money. A collective gasp went through the room. On stage, Marcus's smile froze. The audio kicked in. It was his own voice from my recording. "He's the perfect cover. By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone, and he'll be the one explaining it all to the feds." The room fell into a dead, shocked silence. Bella's face had gone ashen. She turned to me, her eyes wide with horror and disbelief. I just looked back at her, my expression a blank mask. The video continued. My forged signature appeared on screen, glowing in hellish red. Then Bella's voice filled the room. "His father's pathetic working-class morality is a genetic defect." A low murmur of outrage started to build. I saw people turning to stare at our table, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. Bella looked like she had been struck by lightning. She was staring at me, her mouth opening and closing but no sound coming out. The animation of them on the yacht, laughing, flashed on screen. Then came the photo of David Chen, the weary-eyed shop owner, and his quote about his stolen life savings. On stage, Marcus was frantically gesturing to the tech booth, his face purple with rage. "Turn it off, turn that off now." But the bored kid in the polo shirt was gone. I had slipped him $500 on my way back from the booth to go get a steak dinner on me. He was probably halfway across town by now. The final image of the presentation was a simple, stark screen with the logos of the FBI and the IRS. And then, as if on cue, the main doors of the ballroom burst open. It wasn't more waiters. It was a team of federal agents, their badges glinting in the dim light. They moved through the stunned crowd with quiet, grim efficiency. Two of them walked directly to the stage. "Marcus Thorne," one of them said, his voice calm but firm. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering." Henderson, the bank president, dropped the giant check as if it were on fire. Two other agents approached our table. Chloe had started to sob, a hysterical gulping sound. Bella was frozen, her eyes locked on me. The hatred in them was pure and absolute. "Isabella James," an agent said, "you are also under arrest." Yes, they pulled her to her feet and put her hands behind her back. Her eyes never left mine. The mask was gone. The beautiful, charming woman I had married was gone. In her place was a cornered, venomous animal. "Hey you," she spat, her voice a low, vicious hiss that only I could hear. "I will kill you." I didn't flinch, I just held her gaze. I didn't feel hatred. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anything at all. I just said. As they led her away, a pariah in her blood-red gown, I saw Sarah Jenkins scribbling furiously in her notepad. her face alight with the thrill of the story of a lifetime. I stood up, adjusted my bow tie, and walked out of the ballroom. I didn't look back. Outside, the cool night air of Austin hit my face. For the first time in a very long time, I could breathe. It was over. The empire was in ashes, my name was cleared, and I was free. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, go ahead and give it a like. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks a bunch. The fallout from what the media quickly dubbed the Gala of Ruin was immediate and spectacular. Torrent Show and Torrent Show. Sarah Jenkins' story, complete with damning quotes from my presentation and eyewitness accounts of the arrests, was on the front page of The Statesman the next morning. By noon, it was a national news story. The sheer audacity of the crime, combined with the dramatic, public nature of the takedown, was irresistible. The Thorne family name, once a symbol of Austin's new elite, became a byword for greed and corruption overnight. My role was initially a mystery. The first reports painted me as a potential co-conspirator, the architect husband, but I had prepared for that. The day after the gala, my lawyer, a shrewd, no-nonsense woman I'd hired weeks before, delivered my evidence package to the U.S. Attorney's office. It contained the encrypted hard drive with every document, the full audio recordings, my detailed notes, and a sworn affidavit outlining the entire timeline of my discovery and investigation. It was an open and shut case, gift-wrapped. Within 48 hours I was officially named as the key witness for the prosecution, a victim who had been instrumental in uncovering the fraud. My name was cleared not just legally, but in the court of public opinion. I was the man who had brought down a criminal empire from the inside. The legal proceedings were a long, grinding affair. Marcus, Bella, and Chloe, stripped of their wealth and social standing, were a pathetic sight. Their assets were frozen, their high-powered lawyers eventually replaced by court-appointed ones when the money ran out. They tried to fight, of course. Their defense strategy was to paint me as the true mastermind, a vindictive husband who had framed them. It was a laughable strategy. My evidence was too thorough, too meticulous. On the stand, I simply told the truth. I walked the jury through the discovery of the first email, the gaslighting, the moment I found the audio file. I spoke calmly and factually, the architect explaining his blueprints. The hardest part was facing Bella in court. She would stare at me from the defendant's table, her face a mask of cold fury. The love I once felt for her was a phantom limb, an ache where something used to be. Seeing her there, hollowed out by her own greed, I didn't feel hatred. I felt a profound and weary pity. She had everything, beauty, charm, intelligence, and she had used it all to build a cage for herself. They were all found guilty on all counts. Marcus, as the ringleader, got 15 years in federal prison. Chloe, for her role in the shell companies, got 7. And Bella got 10. The judge cited her active and enthusiastic participation in the fraud and the particularly cruel emotional manipulation of her husband as aggravating factors. I heard she broke down sobbing when the sentence was read. I wasn't there to see it. My life in the meantime was a strange paradox. I was infamous. People would recognize me on the street, at the grocery store. Some would approach me and shake my hand, calling me a hero. Others would just stare. I sold the house in Lakeway, the beautiful stage set for my tragic play. I couldn't stand to be in it another second. I auctioned off all the expensive furniture, the artwork, the symbols of a life that had never really been mine. I gave a large portion of the proceeds to a legitimate local charity that helped victims of financial fraud, with a specific donation earmarked for David Chen. I heard he was able to save his business and hire his nephew after all. I moved into a small rented loft in South Austin, a neighborhood with more character and less pretension. It was filled with my old books, my father's worn leather armchair, and the simple, clean lines of furniture I built myself. For the first time in years, my home felt like it belonged to me. I went back to work. My firm stood by me, and the publicity, strangely enough, brought in new clients. They saw me as a man of integrity, a man who couldn't be bought or fooled. I focused on projects that mattered to me: schools, libraries, affordable housing. I found a quiet satisfaction in building real things for real people, a tangible antidote to the phantom empire I had demolished. The world slowly moved on. The story faded from the headlines. Life settled into a new, quieter rhythm. I worked. I read. I took long walks along the river. I reconnected with old friends who I had neglected during my marriage. I slowly, cautiously, began to stitch myself back together. About a year after the sentencing, I received a letter. It was from a federal correctional institution. The handwriting on the envelope was elegant, familiar. It was from Bella. I almost threw it away. Part of me wanted nothing to do with her, to erase her from my life completely. But curiosity, or perhaps a need for some final closure, got the better of me. I opened it. The letter was not what I expected. It wasn't full of rage or accusations. It was apologetic. Ethan, I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you burned it. I know sorry is a word that means nothing coming from me. I've had a lot of time to think in here. There's nothing but time. And all I do is think about what I did, what we did. My father raised me to believe that money and status were the only things that mattered. That winning was everything, and it didn't matter how you did it. I was a good student. I learned his lessons well. I saw you, with your talent and your goodness and your unshakable integrity, and I didn't see a man to love. I saw an asset to be used, a tool. That is the sickness in me. The sickness my father created. I'm not writing this to ask for your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not writing this to make excuses. There are none. I'm writing this because I need you to know that there was a part of me that did love you. It was a small, weak part, easily silenced by greed and ambition, but it was there, and it was real. In the beginning, before my father's plans took over everything, I was happy. I remember that. I remember loving your quiet strength, the way you saw the world, the way you made me feel safe from the very things I was chasing. I destroyed that. I destroyed you. I destroyed myself. I will spend the next decade and probably the rest of my life paying for it. I just wanted you to know, for what it's worth, that the man they put on trial was not the monster. The monster was the one who betrayed him. I hope you find happiness, Ethan, the real kind, the kind you deserve. Bella. I read the letter 3 times. I didn't know what to feel. Was it a genuine apology born of lonely reflection? Or was it one last masterful manipulation, an attempt to reframe her own narrative even from behind bars? In the end, I decided it didn't matter. Her redemption, or lack thereof, was her own journey now. It had nothing to do with me. Her letter was a part of her story, not mine. I took the letter, walked to the small fireplace in my loft, and dropped it into the flames. I watched it curl, turn black, and disappear into ash. It was the last piece of the old life, the final artifact of the wreckage. And now it was gone. My father, the judge, had a saying he was fond of. The wheels of justice grind slow, but they grind exceedingly fine. He was talking about the legal system, but I've come to see it as a law of the universe. Marcus and Bella built their world on a foundation of lies, and like any poorly constructed building, it was doomed to collapse under its own weight. I didn't destroy them. I just pointed out the structural flaws and let gravity do the rest. I don't know if I'll ever trust someone the way I trusted Bella. That kind of naive, absolute faith is a casualty of a war like the one I fought. But I trust myself again. I trust my judgment. I trust my ability to see the world not just for what it appears to be, but for what it is, right down to the studs. Sometimes at night, when a new design is spread out on my table under the warm glow of a lamp, I think about the life I have now. It's smaller than the one I had planned. It's quieter, but it's solid. It's real. It's built on a foundation of truth. And I, the architect, can tell you there is nothing in the world more valuable, or more strong, than that. My name is Ethan James, and this is my home. I built it myself.